රිවයින් කරන්න පුළුවන් නිසා මුකුත් මගේ වෙන්නේ.
BOTV TV බලන හොඳම විදිහ.
Good evening. Tonight, Sri Lanka Forward. Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe says that a development finance corporation will be established to strengthen large-scale industries in the country.
We also want to help the large private sector. We want to start a development finance corporation.
New regulations. Bribery Commission says asset declaration by politicians prior to obtaining nominations in future elections will be made mandatory. A sovereign nation. Archbishop Malcolm Cardinal Ranjit says that international communities do not have the right to force Sri Lanka towards any regulation. And a win for Trump. US President hails a Supreme Court ruling upholding his travel ban, which bans people from several Muslim-majority countries entering the US. It's 9 o'clock on the dot. This is First at 9 on Other Derana 24/7, Sri Lanka's news channel. Hello everyone, I'm Mahesh Johnny. US President Donald Trump finally has been awarded a victory for his policies. We'll take a look at that story on our international segment, but first we begin here at home and in Dimbulagala. President Maithripala Sirisena pledges to continue development and renovation work which are conducted at the historical Dimbulagala temple under the District Development Program Pibidemu Polonnaruwa. The President made this remark while participating in the ceremony to unveil the new building complex at the temple.
The new building complex and the monastery at the historical Dimbulagala temple in Polonnaruwa was declared open by President Maithripala Sirisena today. The total investment of the new facility is approximately 40 million rupees. This has been a long-felt need for the members of the clergy who study here as well as for resident members. I'm happy to be able to complete this new building complex for the historical Dimbulagala temple and offer it to Mahasangha. We have various other plans to develop this religious site, and those projects are being implemented under the District Development Program Pibidemu Polonnaruwa. The site will be fully equipped with facilities and developed, facilitating both local as well as foreign devotees.
Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe yesterday revealed the government's design to uplift Sri Lanka's large-scale industries. The Premier said a development finance corporation will be established and that a cabinet paper is already being drafted towards this end. Addressing an event held in Colombo, he added that the government will release a sum of 10 billion rupees for the stakeholders prior to the formation of the Development Finance Corporation.
The 6th annual symposium of the Sri Lanka Directors Association was held under the auspices of Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe in Colombo last evening.
Economic growth means creating more jobs, creating income and creating wealth. That task of taking the lead in growth today falls onto the private sector. How will the economy grow? Access to markets. You can't grow fast in a market of 22 million people, and you won't. Which means we have to become very competitive. But this is the question. Can we expand by protectionism, or do we expand by going out and becoming competitive? We need foreign direct investment. We need that management. We need that technology. We also want to help the large private sector. We want to start a development finance corporation. The Minister of Finance is preparing the necessary cabinet papers. The stakeholders consist of the central bank, the two state banks and some of the Sri Lankan banks. But even before this corporation is formed, we are going to release 10 billion rupees to go through the stakeholders so they can utilize it this year itself. Let's see how many will use that development finance. You're complaining that we are taxing you. At least we have to return some of the money back to you. There is an existing dialogue between the private sector and the government, but I feel that's going on is not sufficient. Your growth is not only economics, growth is not only business, it's also politics. If you don't get the country to grow, there are no chance of getting your votes to grow.
Today is the Poson Full Moon Poya Day, the day Sri Lanka was gifted Buddhism by India. The day is therefore important to all Buddhists in the country, and devotees across the island today engaged in religious observances. Meanwhile, religious program Derana organised by the Derana Media Network was also worked off today, centering the Ruwanwali Saya in Anuradhapura. Son of an Indian emperor Ashoka, Arahat Mahinda Thera introduced Buddhism to Sri Lanka on a post on full moon Poya day during the 3rd century BC in Mihintalawa of Anuradhapura, which is considered to be the cradle of Buddhism in the country for the very same reason. The significance of the day is not limited to the introduction of Buddhism, but also for its teachings, changing the country's religious, cultural and social behavior, marking a pivotal point in history. Speaking to First at 9, Senior Lecturer of the Department of Pali and Buddhist Studies at the University of Sri Javadhanapura, Venerable Dr. M. Vijitha Dhammathera elaborated the importance of the date of Poson to Sri Lankans.
With the establishment of Buddha Sasana, all the elements of a civilized society began to emerge with the art of writing, arts, architecture, river civilization, religious rituals and literature. It is our duty to protect this great heritage which Arahant Mahinda introduced to Sri Lanka. In this Poson Poe Day, we should have to rethink about that, how we should protect this great heritage introduced by Venerable Arahant Mahinda into Sri Lanka.
Derana Bivandana, the religious program organised by the Derana Media Network to mark the Poson full moon Poya day, centering the Ruwanwali Saya, commenced at dawn today with the participation of thousands of devotees. A Dhamma discussion then followed with the participation of Venerable Professor Madhugura Abedisatera and Professor T.G. Kulathunga. It was followed by offerings made to Lord Buddha.
Derana Bivandana Poson Poe Day program organised by TV Derana was conducted at the premises of the sacred Ruwanwali Mahasaya today. Many devotees around the island were seen flocking into these premises. Many programs including Dhamma sermons and Dhamma discussions were held from this morning.
Kavi Dahana poetry discussion was held with the participation of Venerable Mahabulankulam Gunaratna Thera and poet Alwature Vijitha Abhevikrama. In the meantime, in line with the Derana Bivandana program, the Mahakaruna Buddhist Society, in collaboration with Manusat Derana, organised an event to give stationery and uniforms to school children whose families are affected by kidney diseases.
This year we have more than 100 devotees from, international. We have devotees from Singapore, Malaysia, Australia, Canada and China. The purpose is to celebrate the arrival of Buddhism in Sri Lanka. We hope we have the mental and physical energy to continue.
As you all know, we became Buddhists. We became a civilized nation in this particular land. This is 20th Maha Dansala, what we call gifts of offerings to various types of people. I wish the success of this project and also anything else can be done to help these needy children. Please let us know.
The program Mapiya Vandana, organised by TV Derana, was then held in the evening. Meanwhile, lamps were lit as an offering of light under the patronage of Venerable Digala Piyadasi Thera. In addition, a program consisting of Buddhist songs with the participation of various artists will be telecast on TV Derana from 10:30 p.m. today. In other local stories we have for you tonight, former President Mahinda Rajapaksa insists that more should be done to quash the underworld. Addressing a religious event held in Angunukula Palace today, the former president said that police could be more proactive in this regard.
Former President Mahinda Rajapaksa joined a religious event held at the Punyavardhanarama temple in Eraminiyaya of Angunukula Palace today. Today we see that the underworld is reigning. People and police officers and even infants who are asleep are murdered in cold blood. A situation similar to that of how LTT terrorists entered border villages in northern and eastern provinces has arisen in the south today. Only the government can bring the situation under control and not anyone else. A government can't ask the police to meditate. If the police keep meditating, crimes in the country cannot be controlled. Solutions can be found to issues such as the underworld if the government instructs the police to do its duty. Let the meditating be done at home at leisure.
His Eminence Malcolm Cardinal Ranjith is of the conviction that international communities as well as organizations such as the International Monetary Fund do not have the right to force Sri Lanka into implementing recommendations detrimental to the country's culture. His Eminence expressed these views following a meeting with the General Secretary of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, Professor Rohana Lakshman Piyadasa, in Colombo yesterday.
General Secretary of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, Professor Rohana Lakshman Piyadasa, met with His Eminence Malcolm Cardinal Ranjith last evening. During the meeting, His Eminence highlighted that the Sri Lanka Freedom Party should continue its journey forward and preserve the party's long history and heritage.
When
we look at current economic principles followed across the world and when assistance is provided by institutions such as the IMF and the World Bank, what should be taken into consideration is that certain suggestions put forward with regards to cultural development can be harmful to the country's culture. Countries like America has a 200-year-old history, but if you take a look at Sri Lanka, we have a history of over 2,600 years. Sri Lanka, which is a Buddhist nation, has a conservative culture. Therefore, it is not right to force us to implement certain suggestions they make.
It
is those within the party who should understand the importance of this, and they must therefore work towards coming together. We know what would happen if they break apart.
The Cabinet of Ministers have granted approval for a new cost-based fuel pricing formula. In line with its introduction, fuel prices will also be updated before the 5th of the third month based on the international fuel prices of the previous 2 months. The decision was taken during the Cabinet meeting held yesterday, where several other proposals were also given the go-ahead.
The Cabinet of Ministers convened yesterday, and during the session, approval was granted to introduce a cost-based price formula for fuel. The fuel pricing formula will be executed from the 11th of May this year. Furthermore, fuel prices will be updated before the 5th day of the third month based on the international prices of the previous 2 months. Accordingly, the Cabinet of Ministers approved the proposal presented by the Subject Minister Mangala Samaravira to appoint a committee consisting of officials of the Treasury and the Ministry of Petroleum Resources Development to maintain transparency and to update the fuel prices. In the meantime, the proposal to sign a Memorandum of Understanding between the National Water Supply and Drainage Board and a private company to conduct a feasibility study on the proposed Wandurapinuella reservoir was also given the go-ahead by the Cabinet. It was also decided at the Cabinet meeting to give the green light to select consulting companies for the project to construct 2 fisheries harbours in Point Pedro and Pasale, as well as an anchorage at Mandathiv in Jaffna, under the financial subsidy of $158 million provided by the Asian Development Bank.
Now, very soon, candidates who are vying for public office will be made compulsory to declare their assets prior to obtaining nominations. This was revealed by the Director General of the Commission to investigate allegations of bribery or corruption, Sarath Jayaman, in the sidelines of an event held in Colombo yesterday.
According to the current law, when nominations are handed over, it is not compulsory for election candidates to declare assets. Therefore, we held discussions last week to analyse the flaws as well as the pros and cons of this law. We then came to the conclusion to make this requirement compulsory when nominations are being handed over. The public will have the right to request access to the relevant candidates' asset declarations and also have the right to question the content within. I believe if any election candidate is requesting the vote of the citizens of the country, then he or she will have no hesitation in declaring their assets.
Well, Sri Lanka Army issued a media communique today saying that they had already had discussions with several relevant parties to fall in line with the UN Secretary General's decision number 2012-18 on the 11th of December 2012 in relation to screening of UN peacekeeping personnel for human rights. It added that the Army had engaged in discussions with the Ministry of Defence, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, UN Department of Peacekeeping Operations and the Human Rights Commission of Sri Lanka. The communique said that a national and independent mechanism will be followed with respect to independent screening of Sri Lankan peacekeepers through the Human Rights Commission of Sri Lanka. Well, some good news to report to you tonight. Sri Lanka once more is ranked the second most peaceful nation in South Asia and the second largest riser in the region last year. This was determined in the 12th edition of the Global Peace Index, which was released recently. In the global rank, Sri Lanka stands at 67th place, climbing 5 places compared to last year. Global Peace Index annually ranks 163 independent states and territories according to their level of peacefulness. Iceland remains the most peaceful country in the world, a position it has held since 2008. It is joined at the top of the index by New Zealand, Austria, Portugal and Denmark. Syria remains the least peaceful country in the world. The average level of global peacefulness has declined for the 4th consecutive year, falling by 0.27% last year. The results of this year's Global Peace Index find that 92 countries deteriorated while only 71 improved. Well, a countrywide police raid yesterday yielded nearly 2,300 arrests. Meanwhile, 5,254 people were also charged with traffic violations during the raid. With that, let's take a look at some other stories making news across Sri Lanka.
The post-mortem of the 6-year-old girl discovered dead inside a well from the area of Silipuram in Jaffna was performed at the Jaffna Teaching Hospital today. The examination revealed that the girl was sexually abused and had been strangled to death before being dumped in the well. Police have already arrested a 22-year-old youth on suspicion of the murder. Although trade unions of postal services temporarily called off their ongoing strike action last evening, they say that the Satyagraha worked off opposite the Central Mail Exchange and the Work to Rule campaign will continue until the 7th of July as definitive solutions have not been forthcoming to their concerns. An ambulance bound for Colombo South Teaching Hospital in Kalubowile from the Horana-based hospital met with an accident at the Borlaskamur junction with a patient on board. The incident left the doctor and the assistant with minor injuries. A three-wheeler was engulfed in flames at the Buanekaba junction in Maharagama last night. Police said no one was injured in the fire.
You are watching Sri Lanka's award-winning news channel, Derana 24/7.
Business news now. Sri Lanka was selected as one of the top global safety destinations for women travelers this year at the 2018 Women's Safe Travel Experience Summit. It was organized by China's biggest newspaper group, The People's Daily. In a recently concluded contest which combined the results of expert reviews, ratings and popular votes, Sri Lanka topped the list of 20 countries that were selected. USA, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, Japan, Switzerland and the Maldives were other destinations which were selected at the ceremony. The awards were presented to representatives from the embassies and travel bureaus of the winning countries. Profits of China's major industrial firms grew 16.5% to about $413.2 billion in the first 5 months of this year, quickening from the 15% expansion for the January-April period. According to the National Bureau of Statistics, in May alone, combined profits at industrial companies, each with annual revenue of more than around $3 million were up 21.1% year-on-year. In the first 5 months, year-on-year profits of the mining industry rose to 41.6%. Those of the manufacturing climbed 13.8%, and profits of producers and suppliers of power, heating and water grew 26.1%. Let's move on to international news now. The U.S. Supreme Court yesterday handed President Donald Trump one of the biggest victories of his presidency, upholding his travel ban, targeting several Muslim-majority countries and rejecting the argument that it represented unconstitutional religious discrimination. The 5-4 ruling, with the court's 5 conservatives in the majority, ended a fierce fight in the courts over whether the policy amounted to an unlawful Muslim ban. The Trump administration is, however, facing another court battle with 17 U.S. states suing it for its cruel and unlawful breakup of migrant families.
US President Donald Trump hailed a Supreme Court ruling upholding his travel ban, which covers people from several Muslim-majority countries. Lower courts had deemed the ban unconstitutional, but the US top court reversed the decision in a 5-4 conservative majority ruling. The court's reversal is viewed as a victory for the Trump administration. The ban prohibits most people from Iran, Libya, Somalia, Syria and Yemen from entering the US. At a White House meeting to discuss Trump's proposed border wall, he lauded the decision as a tremendous success.
You have probably all seen, otherwise you wouldn't be at the top of your game, the fact that today's Supreme Court ruling just coming out, a tremendous success, a tremendous victory for the American people and for our Constitution. This is a great...
Although the Supreme Court ruled in favor of US President's travel ban, the Trump administration is facing another court battle over child separation from illegal immigrants. 17 states sued the Trump administration yesterday over its separation of migrant children and parents at the US-Mexico border, saying President Donald Trump's order last week ending the breakups was illusory. Democratic attorneys general from states including Washington, New York and California launched the lawsuit objecting to the policy of refusing entry to asylum seekers at the US-Mexico border. Meanwhile, a California judge has ruled that all families of undocumented immigrants separated at the US border must be reunited within 30 days.
Now, more stories from across the world.
The Dutch Upper House of Parliament yesterday passed a law banning the wearing of face-covering veils in public buildings such as schools, government offices and hospitals. The lower house approved the bill in 2016 after attempts to impose a more general ban on burqas, niqabs and other face-covering veils failed. But critics say its only aim is to get rid of Islamic veils. Measures against the wearing of Islamic veils have already been taken in Belgium, France, Denmark and Spain, among other countries. Colombia yesterday authorized the use of drones to fumigate coca leaves at low altitude using the herbicide glyphosate as part of the Andean nation's battle to eliminate the plant's use in cocaine production. It comes a day after the US said Colombia's coca cultivation had increased 11% to 516,450 acres in 2017, and potential cocaine output had risen 19% to 921 metric tons a year. Colombia suspended aerial fumigation using glyphosate in 2015 after the World Health Organization linked it to cancer. A brave firefighter used his bare hands to move a burning gas cylinder from 9th floor to open ground in just a matter of minutes after he and his fellow men were called to battle a kitchen fire in China yesterday. He made it from the 9th floor to the open ground in just around 2 minutes.
You are watching Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Other Derana 24/7.
Well, today is the penultimate day of group matches in the Football World Cup, with Group E and F in action. Defending champions Germany are out of the World Cup after they lost to South Korea 2-0 in Group F. Their group rival Sweden, however, recorded an emphatic 3-0 victory against Mexico. The results mean Mexico and Sweden progress to a round of 16. Meanwhile, tournament favourites Brazil will take on Serbia and Switzerland will take on Costa Rica later to earn a place in the next round. Let's take a quick glance at the results from yesterday.
Peru recorded their first win at a World Cup final since 1978 as they defeated Australia 2-0 in a dead rubber in Group C. In the group's other match, France and Denmark played out a goalless draw. In an action-packed evening, Argentina qualified for the knockout rounds with the skin of their teeth as they beat Nigeria 2-1 in Group D. Talisman Lionel Messi finally came good and opened the scoring for the South Americans, with defender Marcos Rojo stealing the win in the 86th minute. Croatia, meanwhile already guaranteed a place in the next round, didn't let up as they beat Iceland 2-1 to maintain their 100% win record in the group phase.
You are watching Sri Lanka's #1 news channel, Other Derana 24/7.
A quick look at your weather. Wet weather can be expected in the districts of Kalutara, Galle and Mathura over the next 24 hours. Meanwhile, several spells of showers may occur in central and northwestern provinces and in Colombo, Gampaha and Hambantota districts. Let's now take a look at your city-by-city forecast in key cities across the island. And that is a part of your world tonight right here on Sri Lanka's news channel, Other Derana 24/7. I'm Mahesh Johnny. I'll be back tomorrow at the same time with more of First at 9. Be sure to join me then. But before we go, we like to leave you with some visuals of Mihinthale, the place which is considered to be the cradle of Buddhism in Sri Lanka. This is the place where the meeting between the Buddhist monk Mihindu from India and King Derana. Thank you very much for joining us. Good night.
Bringing you the news and information 24 hours a day. This is Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Other Derana 24/7.